Our panel discussion is about smart telescopes this evening. Towards the end of last fall and going into the Christmas season, there seemed to be an awful lot of buzz around HAS with respect to people getting involved with smart telescopes. And based on the fact that there was so much, seemed to be so much activity and interest, thought it would be a good idea to get a couple of people who are involved in using smart telescopes and have them give us a little background on what's going on there. So let me see if I can make my my slide go. There we go. Just to start out, I want to make sure that we kind of frame this properly. Smart telescopes have been around for a little while. It's just that they've been evolving technology. And the objective of this presentation is to document the experience of Stephen and Craig and Julian as they've managed to figure out how to use smart telescopes. We just want to make sure you understand this is not an exhaustive review or an exhaustive how-to. It's an introduction to it, and neither is it intended to be any kind of an endorsement from HAS with respect to a particular model of smart telescopes. With that in mind, the info and opinions are those of the presenters. I love doing that. It just sounds so official. Anyway, so just to give a little bit of background, smart telescopes are really growing in popularity these days. The original smart telescope was brought out in 2018 by a French startup technology company called Vaonis. And when it came out, this is a picture of what the original Vaonis looked like. Vaonis Stellina looked like. It had basically a 4-inch refractor, and it retailed for $4,000. It also had everything, all of the factors that a good smart telescope does now. This one in 2018 did. In truth, there are now about 5 or 6 different models with different brand names, and it's interesting to note that in the 6 years since they were started, the technology has improved. The choices on the marketplace are much increased, and the price point has come down, all of which is a typical thing for a new technology entering the market. And we've kind of hit a point where between the technology and the price points, these smart telescopes are really catching on. Kind of for us old timers, it kind of reminds me of when we started getting go-to telescopes in the late 90s. Very, very similar. The first ones needed help, and by the time it got to be about 2004, 2005, it was pretty well accepted. I just wanted to let you know, this goes back, the original Vaonis Stellina. I did a beginning astrophotography presentation all the way back in 2020. And at that point, I noticed that the Stellina was out there, and I did several slides on it, and the next couple of slides are from that presentation. Like I say, it was, I'm sorry, a 3-inch telescope, light pollution filter, autofocuser, dew heater. It's an alt-az mount, does plate solving, automatically takes individual subframes, automatically aligns and stacks those subframes. This particular version had the tripod was included. I don't think that's the case now with the current version of the Stellina, and it was only around $4,000 when it came out. I'm just telling you that all of these particular features are key elements of what makes a smart telescope go. And all of the smart telescopes out there have these features. So in that presentation, I showed a couple of images I got off the internet that came from the Stellina. Now we've got a number of different smart telescopes on the market. The first one, and what looks to be the smallest one, is called the Dwarf Lab 2, and it's a sub $500 price range. The Vaonis Vespera, I think Julian's going to talk to us about this one. It's has a price point of between $1,500 and $3,000, depending on what accessories you buy with it. And this is the one I can say my standard line for astrophotography. Remember, there's always an upgrade, right? So the current version that has really taken HAS by storm is the ZWO Seestar at $500 price point. ZWO is a Chinese company that does astro-imaging cameras, and actually they do very good software. I've also heard the next step for them beyond this, the Seestar is an actual astro-imaging camera that you attach to the back of your telescope that has all of the same features in it. You may have to add a autofocuser, but that's about it. So it'll all be like a two unit package, and I'm waiting to see what that one looks like. And then Celestron has also gotten into the game just recently. I believe this is a 4-inch reflector, and its price point is about $4,000. And then the Unistellar Odyssey, Unistellar was the second company that came out with a smart telescope around 2020, and it's about $2,500. So with that, like I say, I just wanted to kind of frame this discussion, and with that, I think we're going to go with Stephen. Are you going first? I think with this Seestar.
I think for some reason I thought Julian was going to go first, but I can go.
Okay, whatever. Sorry,
Julian, if you're good. Oh, real quick, Don. Walt just put in the chat the Celestron Origin is actually a 6-inch.
Oh, is it a 6-inch scope? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I have the Vespera and the Seestar, and I wanted to compare both options. But before I do that, just to give you some context, why did I buy smart scopes? What's my objective? So I started observing really seriously about 3 years ago. And of course, started with the moon and the planets. But my objective is really learning about everything that I can see in the sky. So really observing as many objects as I can, and doing that as often as I can. I'm not interested really in getting beautiful photos. My interest is really in getting to know these objects, observations, really learning about them. Of course, I do enjoy seeing the photos that people that have the skills to do that do, but I'm not doing that myself. I really wanted to have this from the beginning, really to emphasize that I still prefer looking through an eyepiece if I can. So I do have a nice 18-inch scope. I like to go to darker skies. I do like the experience of seeing the objects through the eyepiece and really getting those photons on my eyes. However, how often can I do that? How often can I go to the dark side, or really set up my telescope? How many nights per year can I do that? Obviously not that often. So smart scopes really increased my observation and my pleasure with astronomy by a huge amount, because anytime there's a clear sky, I can have a smart scope on my backyard, and that includes if it's too cold, if it's too hot, if it's humid, if there are mosquitoes. You know, if I have to work that evening, or family life, even if I don't have too much time, it is still worth observing with a smart scope, because I can just take it outside, turn it on, and it's very quick, and set it up and start observing. It's a couple of minutes. So even if I have very little time to set it up, I can still do that, and even as I'm doing other things, I can still get images and observe. Very important, being in the Houston area, you're kind of limited in terms of how much you can see in terms of deep sky objects, and a smart scope essentially magnifies the catalog of objects that you can see by a huge amount. So, for example, after planets and the moon, I started observing Messier objects. So I started observing galaxies, nebulae, clusters, but it gets to a point where it gets really difficult to see those from the light polluted backyard. And with the smart scope, you can essentially see all of them from our backyard in Bortle 9. And color, very nice, especially nebulae, or even the different colors of stars. I always love to see those, and it's something that the smart scope adds to the experience. So getting into the comparison here, we have the Vespera on the left and the Seestar on the right. The first consideration here, cost. So Don already showed these ranges. It's a big difference. So I think the question that could come to mind at this point is it worth going for the Vespera at this point? So I have some images, and you'll be the judge. You look at my images and you think about it. But the Vespera came first. So it came. It's the same company as Stellina, which was the first one, as Don was just showing. The Stellina was fairly expensive from my perspective. The Vespera, essentially half of the cost of the Stellina. That was motivation enough. That reduction in price was motivation enough for me to try it out. And the Seestar came a little bit after that. So I got the Vespera in 2022. The Seestar was announced and became available in 2023. And when I couldn't believe when I saw the price for the Seestar, and I thought, well, at this price point, I'm gonna get a Seestar and see how they compare, and then I decide if I sell one of them or if I keep both. So the second consideration here that I think is important is filters. especially for nebulae. It's good to have a dual band filter for the Vespera. Now, the Seestar has the filter already embedded into the system, so you just have to activate that or select that from the app. So I think it's very convenient to have that option, because you may want to use a filter for nebulae, but not for galaxies and clusters, because I don't think the filter helps too much, and you're losing some of the signal. So if you want to go back and forth between types of objects, you can do that with the Seestar. The Vespera, it requires you to go to the scope and remove the filter or add the filter. And I know that at this point it sounds a bit ridiculous that oh, so much work, right? Walk to the scope and add a filter or remove a filter. But yeah, if you're inside the house and you have that convenience, maybe it's a little bit of a barrier, depending on what you're doing at that point, to go there and add a filter or remove the filter, but not a big deal. Framing. I'm going to show a short video that's going to illustrate that. But essentially, the Vespera has something called covalence. That's the name of their system, that essentially allows you to choose the framing of your object. So you can rotate, you can change the aspect ratio. So you can go to an object and you can select a framing that you like, for example, M81 and M82, which are two galaxies. You want to show them together, maybe you go there and you select exactly what you want to see in terms of framing. That's a very nice capability, and it increases how much you can see from one observation. The Seestar is you select the object and it's going to have a fixed aspect ratio. That view is what you get for the Seestar. So it's one of the major selling points for the Vespera is it's that idea that you are transitioning more into astrophotography, because you can actually have more sophisticated framing, composition. So you can do a little bit more with that system. Then in terms of stacking, so the way all of them work is we are getting photos of 10 seconds in duration, and that's the standard. At this point, we can actually tweak those settings, but the out of the box setting is 10 seconds of exposure, and you keep taking those 10 seconds exposures and you're adding them together, you're stacking them, and of course the app does that automatically. But what I like about the Vespera is that you can actually see intermediate steps. So if you're imaging for like 20 minutes, you can go back and see what was the result of stacking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 20 minutes. So you can do that real time, and you can see how it is changing as your duration is increasing. The Seestar, you see the final result that you have at that time. So you can't really go back in the app and see what you had 5 minutes ago. Not a huge thing, but I do like to watch that evolution with the Vespera. Then locating objects, the Seestar has a nice sky atlas, And if you have used the ASI Air, it's a similar interface and a similar system where you can essentially you can essentially star hop in the app. You can work with the atlas and go to where you want to go. But as far as I know, there's no option of adding coordinates into the system, into the app. So if you're observing a comet, for example, of course, you can find out what is the nearest object or star, and then go from there with the sky atlas. Now the Vespera doesn't have that nice atlas, but you can add coordinates. So if you know your coordinates, you can just type them and go directly there. So different interfaces also they both work, but different systems. And then finally, Wi-Fi, as if we are putting these scopes outside and then coming inside, and just if it's, for example, too hot or too cold and you just want to be inside for the most part, that's where it makes a difference. The Vespera is stronger signal, so essentially anywhere in my house I can play with that. I still have communication with the scope. The Seestar, I have to be closer to the backyard. Depending on where I go, I lose connection. But it's a relative term. Actually, it's not like the Seestar is weak. It's just weaker than the Vespera, but still pretty good. Still works pretty well. So want to show the interface here. This is the app, how it looks like on a phone. You can also use it on iPad, and then the aspect ratio is different. But I want to show you how to do the mosaic and select the framing that you want for an object. So this is the main page here. That's where we initialize the scope, and it's really just that to get it started, to get the scope started. You put it outside, you press the button to turn it on, and then you go to the app, connect through Wi-Fi, and then you press the initialize button here, and it's gonna go and do everything. It's gonna align itself, it's gonna focus, and it's gonna get ready. So then after it is ready, and this is what it is showing here, then you can select an object. So we go to this point here, and we can go by category. So we can say favorites. We go to manual mode where we can enter coordinates, or we can go with recommended objects for the night. So based on your location, it's gonna recommend objects that are available at that point and that have good positioning. One thing that I would like to have that is not available is being able to add how much of open sky you have from your location. So sometimes it shows as available, but it's not available because I have trees. But I have another way of checking for those. But for example, I selected galaxies here, and it gives lots of options. Then I go to this one, C52, and I select observe. You can check some information about that galaxy, distance, etc. And that's where we can select the framing. So you see that I'm changing the aspect ratio, positioning, and then I click or tap observe, and that's it. It goes to the object, and it shows some trivia, some astro trivia. in the meantime, if you want to read also about the object that you're gonna observe. And this is the app when you are imaging. I mentioned the stacking where you can actually see the evolution. So I recorded this yesterday from my backyard. That's M80. That's a globular cluster. And I'm starting. So I imaged for an hour. So I have 360 captures of 10 seconds. And I'm going to play how it looks like the evolution here. So we actually get a lot in the first 10 seconds, but it obviously improves. You may not want to capture for an hour. It really depends on what you are observing, what you want to do that night. But I don't know if you can see it from the screen, but in the app, it's a little bit easier to see, for example, the colors of the stars, the contrast here. I always find that really nice. And of course, I love the globular clusters, the Messier clusters, and that's what it looks like when we are imaging. So at any point in time when you're imaging, you can play, you can tap here and play the evolution of stacking. So I think that's nice. All right. Finally, I wanted to show some image comparisons. I have done 0 post-processing. So this is just as it came from the app, from the Vespera and from the Seestar. I did them same day, same time. So I had both scopes from my backyard, Bortle 9. They have similar duration, but not the same, because usually the Seestar has more frame rejections. So what happens with the smart scopes is that we are getting images, but sometimes the app decides that image is not good enough, and it doesn't use that for the stacking. So when you see the duration, that's not the duration of observation. It's actually the duration of stacking. So it's the summation of how much exposure you got for that object. And the Seestar, it has been a little bit more finicky with alignment, and some people have special tripods or devices to align them. I took the approach of minimal effort. I just put the scope there, and if it doesn't complain about alignment, I let it run. So sometimes it's not perfect, but it has been good enough. So most of the images here are nebulous, and I'm using filters with them for them because it really brings up the colors and the brightness of them. So I start with maybe the easiest one that we would try. So this is the Orion Nebula, famous M42. On the left, you have the Vespera, and on the right, you have Seestar. The stacking duration here is 20 minutes, so it's exactly the same. So same time, same day, same place, same stacking time, and here you can see some differences between the two scopes, and that's when really you can compare and decide what is worth for you in terms of cost and imaging. Of course, no post-processing here. Again, it's just the final image that has been stacked. I don't know what would happen if we had the fit file and if we did the processing for both cases, how much they would differ. Then Horsehead Nebula, which is essentially impossible to see from my backyard even with a large scope. Very, very difficult to see this one. 60 minutes, so an hour with the Vespera, and then 48 minutes with Seestar. Then the Rosette Nebula, and we can also see the stars there. The Vespera is a little bit longer again, so maybe not. I don't know if it's a fair comparison because it's a bit more time, but there's also a different focal ratio between the Vespera and the Seestar. So the Vespera is a bit faster; it's f4. The Seestar is f5. So yeah, there are differences between the images, but the Seestar is also very nice. Then this one is the Tadpole Nebula. Same themes here. A little bit longer with the Vespera, but you see what you get in terms of the darker regions in the nebula and the colors. M27, the Dumbbell Nebula. So this is a smaller nebula, of course, but you can clearly see the colors from both scopes. Then we start getting into the more difficult ones. This is called the Robin's Egg Nebula. Also, it gets challenging with a scope in a light polluted backyard, but we can clearly see them with both scopes. And similarly, Crystal Ball Nebula. Smaller one, but we can clearly see them. And finally, M78. This one is also very challenging to see with just with glass with a typical scope. But we can clearly see them in both scopes. And that's really what I had for the comparison.
All right, thank you, Julian. I think we'll save questions till the end so we can all get through our presentation.
Well, where am I coming from? I'm primarily a visual astronomer, as you've seen, and maybe that's part of the theme here. Maybe we're just too lazy to be astrophotographers. I don't know. I do like to take some photographs. I think that's true for everybody, particularly in this cell phone era, where people do it when you're doing outreach. Someone will always be trying to take a picture through your eyepiece, just handheld, and it's a difficult thing to do. Though I've done that on occasion too. For instance, this particular shot was during the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and I got it in the C14 out at the dark site, and was able to stick a cell phone on there, an old 6S, and took the picture. Jupiter comes up with some slight bands, but a bit overexposed, a couple moons. I think there might have been another one there, but it didn't always show up. And Saturn, you can see rings, super. I guess the reason people take pictures is they evoke the experience, and this is certainly something that I do it for. It reminds me of that particular occasion. It brought a smile to my face when I was preparing the presentation. I make sketches for a similar reason. Though sketching, unlike astrophotography, I think you have to study the object in more detail, and that's one of the reasons I do it. And I have a limited EAA experience, and I'm going to do a brief comparison next between the Revolution Imager and the Seestar to give you some idea of, I need to do page down, sorry about that. The Revolution Imager is a typical EAA setup. It's probably at the lower end. It's advertised as the best $300 eyepiece you can get. Yes and no. It will work on any telescope. That was what Don was talking about, perhaps is coming from ZWO next. It gives you a live view, as does the Seestar. It does limited in camera stacking. I think it only does 5 exposures at once. It has a lot more settings. There's gain and this and that and the other thing, and I never quite figured all that out. You can capture images to your iPad, your cell phone, to a computer, or a DVR. And again, the basic cost is $300. Like Don said, there are always upgrades. The Seestar, by comparison, includes everything. There's still little things you can buy. I think I have a printed dust cap for it. And there's even a fit-on filter holder that can go over the lens to give you a filtered view different than the one in your Seestar. It has more pixels than the CCD in the R2, but it loses resolution when you blow the picture up for small objects. Cost, we heard, $500, and it is simple to use. I like that. I find myself in the same boat here as Uncle Rod Molise, you may have heard of. I'm going to quote him here because he puts it pretty simply. You see, the difficulty is the setup it requires.
Edison, are you hungry? I can make you chicken tacos.
Somebody
You want a
not
little bit of cheese?
Okay.
Get it in pregnant.
In addition to the telescope and mount, I need a computer to control the camera, a separate DVR to record the video or connection to the computer, an analog display for the camera, power supplies, cables, video switcher, etc. I have a picture of all the cables and stuff of mine there. I've set it up and I've used it, as we'll see, on several occasions, but do I use it often? No, just like Rod. He did take an interesting picture, I thought, there. Something you probably cannot see visually, even with a big scope, are the moons of Uranus. And he just did a quick 6-minute shot and got that. Here, by way of comparison, are shots I've taken of Saturn and Jupiter with the Revolution Imager. The Seestar has added a planetary mode, but in native mode without any enhancement, this is the size of Jupiter. Now, the guy that did that, this is taken from Cloudy Nights, did a fair amount of processing, and he got a view that is good, more colorful than the image I got through the Revolution Imager. So it is possible to do that, but not if you're me. Again, here's an example of the R2 on the moon. Because of the image scale, it gives you more detail than the blown up view you get from the S50 from that native shot shown below. One of the reasons I use it is I like to compare my visual view with a picture. And this allows me, one, what did I see? Did I see things that are really there? Did I imagine some things that aren't really there? Did I look at something entirely different and think I was on target when I wasn't. And this is a case where I was looking at the Black Eye galaxy from my backyard, or thought I was, because it's part of the AL Urban Observing program, which I'm a little doubtful I'm going to be able to complete. I'm down to the last 4 or 5 objects with surface brightness of 22.3 or 4, and Bortle 9 skies, that's tough. But the Seestar in a few minutes picked it up, showed it had a black eye. But when I compared the actual stars I sketched in the field of view and where I saw in the orientation of my sketch, no, I was imagining something. I can't make them match no matter how much I turn it, flip it, rotate it to orient it properly. There are cases where it does work, though. This is a case where I was looking at the Crescent Nebula, which is on the AL sketching program. And the top view, I actually sketched this, and I then had the Seestar take a photo at the same time. I eventually took that, I rotated it, I cropped it, I zoomed it properly to get the same field of view. And I checked the stars, and yes, it was a match. Now, I did process that slightly using something again from Cloudy Nights. It was the easy peasy Seestar processing with free software, and just played around with that. One advantage of the Seestar, not necessarily if you're an astrophotographer, but is oftentimes I look at the shots that some of our astrophotographers in the club take, and I like comparing them to what I saw. But if you compare the shot on the right, which is from Wikimedia, you can see a lot more detail. And there's so much detail that sometimes it's hard to tell, did I see this particular star or not? Because a lot more stars are shown, a lot more detail is shown. And sometimes some of the faint stars are washed out because they've exposed it more to bring out more detail. This is a recent one where actually I was doing a comparison versus the view you can extract from software. So in this particular case, I was using SkyTools 4, and I had the view in the eyepiece for the eyepiece and the telescope I was using, and I was checking off stars, and it didn't match. And if you look, I don't know if you can see where I have the pointer on screen, but right in the middle of the helmet is a bright star. The database or multiple databases that SkyTools is using show that star twice. I've reported this to them, by the way, and it's not the first time it's happened. There are errors in those databases, and it's not there. And I puzzled over this for 3 or 4 days, saying, no, I saw something. That can't be an accident. I sketched all these details. I had, I do have an imagination, but not that good. So essentially, by checking it against the Seestar photo, I pretty much saw. Now, some of the fainter things did not show up in the view. There are some things that may not be there. This is actually part of this here, but I don't have it located well, and there's not quite that distinct a branch back to the helmet. So this is pretty much what I use it for. I think I should be actually doing a bit more like Julian was doing, because it is easy enough to just put it out in the backyard while you're watching TV. Just send it here, send it there, and get some shots. I think Stephen has actually done programs with it. He may mention the Messier program, which strikes me, hey, This is what you do as a visual astronomer. It was the second or third program I did. So I really think I need to be doing that as well. But with that, I will turn it back over to Stephen and with
All right.
screen sharing there.
Okay. Let me pull up my slides here. Let me talk just a little bit now about my journey through using the Seestar. First, a little bit about myself. A lot of you know me, probably already know this, but I am a longtime visual observer. I've been visual observing since I was 12 years old. Well, 12 years old is when I started making my own observations with my own telescope. I was into astronomy even before that. But it's always been visual. Always been with a Dobsonian. The last 10 years, my main scope has been a 16-inch Dobsonian, which you can see pictured here in the photo with me. I'm not typically a high-tech astronomer. My telescope, my 16-inch Dob is actually all manual. I don't even plug it into it. I'm just out here pushing it around, using my telrad to locate objects. Visual observer to the core for many. But so what am I doing? What am I getting into imaging? Well, you know, there are a lot of folks who get into imaging who want to create photos good enough for an art exhibition. And you know what? That's great. These people create some wonderful work. It's amazing what they can do. Some of us, though, are just astro tourists who want pics of the things we see in their telescope. And you know, that's me. I've never been opposed to astrophotography, but you know, buying a whole bunch of expensive equipment and spending hours sitting in front of a computer processing in my images is not what I want to do. What I want to do, but what I do want to do, you know, again, you know, so I like visual observing, but it's not exactly easy to take a record, to get a record of what I'm seeing. And now I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. In fact, I'm very passionate about logging your visual observations and, you know, making sketches and getting a record of visual experience as much as you can. And in fact, I did a whole meeting presentation on that 3 years ago. So please be sure to check that out on our YouTube channel. But I would like to take photos also, not to create art, but just to, you know, like I use the phrase astro tourist. Like, I mean, really, you know, I'm exploring the universe, you know, with my telescope from Earth. I want to take the picture. And now that we have these smart telescopes, that has finally made that effort cost effective for the first time in the history of our hobby. You know, and it has expanded my my astronomical experience. You know, doing visual with my 16-inch means making a lot of time. You know, I was at the dark side with my 16-inch last night, but you know, I have a day job. You know, me getting myself out to the dark side with my 16-inch last night. You know, I got out there, I started. It's June. It's not even dark till 10 o'clock. I'm already tired. I observed with my 16-inch for like 2.5 hours, 1:30. I physically couldn't go on anymore. Still had to go to sleep. And I still had to take the day off work to recover from last night. It's an undertaking. Not as much of an undertaking if the weather actually falls on a weekend, but still, it's an undertaking. Using the Seestar, on the other hand, I can do this in my spare time, even while I'm doing other things. You know, I can use my Seestar in the backyard while I'm eating dinner. This time of year, because it's not dark until way after dinner. But in the wintertime, I was using it during dinner. I can be hanging out with my kid in the living room while my Seestar is in the backyard doing things. You know, any number of things. I can get up in the morning on a weekday. I can get up an hour early, you know, and just set it outside and get some morning objects while I'm getting ready for work. The ease of it is phenomenal. I do just as much visual observing as I did before I got a Seestar. But the Seestar has allowed me to do a lot more astronomy the rest of the time. And so I'm doing a lot more astronomy just since I have purchased the Seestar. And so now I'm just going to get into a few of my favorite adventures in using the Seestar. This is a photograph that I took of the Seestar of Abell 21. It's a planetary nebula in Gemini, sometimes referred to as the Medusa Nebula. This is a nebula that was not discovered until 1955. That's fairly recent. A lot of the objects that are popular with us amateurs were discovered a lot earlier. Charles Messier published his list of Messier objects in 1784. So this is a very dim, very recently discovered, very faint object. I've seen it visually in my 16-inch from the dark side, but it's not easy to do, usually with the help of the filter. I took this photograph from my backyard here in Cyprus. I'm in the city. I'm not in the downtown, but you know, light pollution sucks here too. And this was done right here in my backyard. 21 minutes of 10-second exposures. Abell 21. It is one of the brighter Abell, but still, it's an Abell. And I saw it, and I captured an image of it in my backyard. That is crazy. But that's one of the things you can do with the Seestar. Here's another example of me just kind of stretching the Seestar to its limits here. This is another planetary nebula. This is Minkowski 1-7. I was actually challenged to do this by, well, maybe not directly challenged to this, but I interpreted it as a challenge from Kenneth Drake when I posted on the Astro list another faint object that was considerably larger. He made a comment that, well, at least that's a big object, and then I think you might have trouble seeing like a Minkowski or something like that with the Seestar. You know, I'm always one to respond to a challenge. I read his email and said, "Hold my beer." So Minkowski 1-7. This object, it's a planetary nebula. It's a very small planetary nebula. There's a lot of these planetary nebulae out there. They're very small and are identifiable primarily. They were discovered spectroscopically, and so the way you observe them, the way we observe them in visual observing, is you know, we take our filter, instead of screwing it on the eyepiece, stick it in your hand and pass it between your eye and the eyepiece, and just kind of move it back and forth and see, okay, which little point of light in my field of view responds to the filter when the rest of them, because they're stars, do not. So that's how you do that in visual observing. So I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to do this with the Seestar? Obviously, you know, flipping the filter on and off under the live view, I didn't even attempt to do that. I discovered that was a bad idea, primarily because I don't want to wear out the filter mechanism, but also because you probably can't do it fast enough for good results. And I certainly am not going to be able to see this thing in the live view in my light pollution anyway. So I didn't do that. What I did instead was I took two separate images, one with the nebula filter on and one with the nebula filter off, of the same duration. And then once I'm done taking these two photos, I just swipe back and forth between the two on my phone. I don't know if you're familiar with what a blink comparator is. That's it's kind of a device that they use to do that with actual photos. You know, way back before in the old days, before all this digital stuff. And that device had Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto. He had two images of the same field, and he was blinking back and forth between them. He was looking for something to move. So I'm doing this with my phone, not to see something moving, but to see something affected by the filter. And as you can see, much like the discovery photos of Pluto, I added a handy-dandy little arrow to these photos. And you can see that there's one point of light in my image that, you know, it's very helpfully right next to another star. And you'll see that with the filter off, that point of light is considerably dimmer than the star above it. With the filter on, it's almost equivalent in brightness to the star. So that must be the planetary nebula I was aiming at, Minkowski 1-7. So, you know, and this is the kind of thing that I like to do with the Seestar. Again, I'm not out to take crazy photos. I'm just out exploring the universe, seeing what I can see, pushing my equipment to the limit. You know, what can I find? So this is just an example of one of the ways in which I've been able to do that. So there's so many different things that you can do with the Seestar. Here's a comet. I've taken much better photos than this of brighter comets, but I highlighted this one because I actually took photos of this comet, which is the comet 144P Kushida. I took pictures of this comet a few hours apart. And you can see, and here I've employed the use of the handy-dandy arrow. You can see that the position of the comet has moved with respect to the background stars. And of course, you can see the field is also rotated again. It's also rotated. Well, that's a consequence of what Julian was referring to earlier about how you don't really have a whole lot of framing to see stuff. You get what you get, so the field rotation not good. It is what it is. But you bring your heaven, you can see it's the same field. You can see where the comet has moved positions with respect to that bright star now. Tracking the motion of these comets is what I mentioned here. You can use it for the AL Comet Observatory. I don't know if you're familiar with the Astronomical Comet Program. The Comet Program is basically what you need to do for that program is observe a certain number of comets, and if the comet has a visible coma and tail, if it looks like a comet, then you just need one sketch or image. But if not, you need two. You need to do two different at different times and spot the motion. I was never really able to do that visually because usually visually I'm out there for one night. And I'm usually doing a whole bunch of other things. I feel like making two different sketches of the field. But the Comet Program, because of its sort of difficulty in seeing that many comets, and how most people are going to be completing it over a very long period of time, it's one of the few Astronomical League programs where you can actually mix visual and imaging. So I've got about 8 or 10 comet sketches, but now I can add some Seestar images and get a little bit more productive on my comet observer. And finally, I used my Seestar for the April 8th, 2024 eclipse. You can see on the screen I took some images every few minutes. I don't think it's been mentioned yet, but the Seestar actually comes with a solar filter that you can pop right over the lens. It's I think it's equivalent to the 1000 Oaks solar filter, but I've seen a lot of people pop that out and stick some data film and supply filter holder instead with some good results as well. But yeah, here's my pictures of the eclipse. A nice close-up of the totality. People like to say that the very first time you observe a solar eclipse, you shouldn't try to mess with the imaging or all that because you'll start fiddling with your camera and exposure settings and all that, and you'll miss out on the experience. And I was fully prepared to follow that advice until I got a Seestar, because the Seestar is so easy. I figured, can I have my cake and eat it too? And the answer is yes, you can, as long as you don't go crazy. You don't start thinking about, okay, should I fiddle with this setting? Should I not fiddle with it? You'll notice in my images here, as we got closer to totality, the brightness actually increased a little bit. And that's because the Seestar was on its own, raising the gain to compensate for the dimmerness of the sun. That, if you're taking a serious photo of the eclipse, that's probably not desirable. But again, my first solar eclipse, per the conventional wisdom, I shouldn't even be imaging it. So I left it alone. I told myself all I was gonna do is get the Seestar tracking the sun and take a snapshot every few minutes. And of course, remember to take the filter off in the calendar. Right? And that's what I did. And I came away with the experience that I wanted out of this eclipse. Well, not exactly the eclipse I want and the experience I wanted. The clouds were a little annoying, especially since the clouds where I was at were worst right at totality, unfortunately. But it was good enough that I was able to get a shot with the cloudy with the around and a little bit of a problem. Can't complain too. But Seestar was still a very great instrument for imaging the eclipse if you're not going to get all Robert Reeves about it. This is you just want a simple shot of your experience. It's great for that. That's all I have there. Let me go ahead.
Okay.
Before I go over to Don, though, I do want to share just a little bit more stuff here. Sorry, just because so believe it or not, I'm just going to click through this really quick. Since I have gotten my Seestar, I have actually observed all 110 Messier objects with it already. And if we click through very quickly, there are multiples to a page, so this might protect you forever. These are not great images, even by Seestar standards, but I've got them, and it's incredible that I was able to do this. Every one of these images was taken from my backyard here in the city. Some are better than others, but the fact is simply that I did it. I got all of these objects that I've been observing visually for many years, and now I have photos of them all that are taken from my backyard with minimal effort, thanks to the C-SPAN. So yeah, it's just it's an incredible thing. And one more thing I wanted to toss out there. This came up at the very last minute. Is Julian, you mentioned earlier about how the Seestar's Wi-Fi not the greatest. You have to can't be too far away from it, and that's technically true if you're trying to. It's technically true when you're trying to control it, but you don't actually have to be connected to the Seestar's Wi-Fi while it's actually capturing the image. It will continue capturing the image even if disconnected. And I say that because I took advantage of this on purpose last night when I was at the dark side. As I mentioned before, I was kind of hitting the wall around 1:30. And I was done with the visual observing. I needed to go to sleep, but I didn't want to stop entirely. I didn't want to stop, obviously. So I was like, well, I've got my Seestar out. Maybe I can get a good image of an object that's going to be up for several hours here before sunrise. And so I told my Seestar to go over to the Veil net. Specifically, my favorite part of the Veil net, NBC 6992, the Eastern Veil. I set my Seestar on the Veil Nebula, and then I took my phone over to the bunkhouse and I went to sleep. And the bunkhouse was way too far from the pad. I had my Seestar out. My phone disconnected from it, but that was no problem whatsoever for the Seestar. It kept shooting, and when I woke up, I woke up at about 4 o'clock in the morning. I had to go pee. I walked back over to the Seestar with my phone, reconnected it, and I had this lovely 92 minutes of integration on NGC 6992. So yeah, the Seestar's Wi-Fi range isn't great when you need to actually be controlling it, but you don't need to be connected when it's actually shooting. So another little plug for the Seestar. I took this image and I was conked out in the bunkhouse. My visual observing was done, but my Seestar kept working. So now I will kick it back over to them.
Okay, can you see that? Improving your images, is that showing all right? No. How's that?
Still no.
Still no. Now that's my main image though. Okay. Hang on.
No, we're not seeing anything but you.
Not seeing anything but me. It shows me I'm not sure what's going on. It shows me on screen one, and I'm trying to share screen one. Okay, here we go. Maybe that'll do it.
Yes.
It helps if you push the share button when you're supposed to, you know. Anyway, I just want to add a couple of quick comments to dovetail a little bit with what Stephen was saying. I do happen to know that you don't have to have your Seestar directly connected. You don't have to directly connect your Seestar Wi-Fi to your phone. You can actually go across a network, a Wi-Fi network, and connect your phone and the Seestar across the network. It's a different mode, and it works really well. Don't tell Chris Ober I told you that, but you know, the Wi-Fi out of the dark side is pretty good. You can do it. The other thing I want to just kind of summarize is that it's clear that that using a smart telescope to support your visual observing can be a really profitable way to work. As an astrophotographer, I actually do it the other way. I get the astro-imaging going, and then I go to the visual observing as long as I can stay awake and let it run. But that's neither here nor there. So the two are converging from just different sides of the continuum there. Any rate, the thing I would like to get into now is just a little bit about what can you do if you start to feel like, hey, you know, this is really kind of cool. I'd like to see if I can get a little bit better images and share the images. I mean, like all three guys said, this is the age of smartphones. Everybody likes to share images, and if you're happy with them, that's great. If you compare them against others and you say, you know, I'd kind of like to do something different, there are a few things that you can do without getting too crazy to improve your images. The image that's up here on this slide was actually one that I got permission to use off the Seestar Facebook group. It's of the Eagle Nebula, and it's 1,550 10-second subs, which is like 4.3 hours. It was taken over 3 nights, and it was taken from a suburban site, which is brighter than the dark site, and it was processed. Now, I messaged with this gentleman, and he told me that yes, he's kind of a beginning astrophotographer, so he has some experience doing processing. So the main difference between this and a raw image coming out of your smart telescope is that it's a much longer exposure, total exposure, and then there have been several things to do that have been done to it to increase the contrast in the image to help bring out the detail a little bit more, make the image a little bit brighter. Okay, and that's all really what post-processing is in a astro image, in brief. So I just wanted to pass along from an astrophotography point of view a few rules of thumb for using your smart scope to maybe get a little bit better images than you know improve your imaging. first of all, you need to plan ahead and kind of get an idea of what it is you want to image, because it's best to image these objects as they're going through the meridian. You don't the higher in the sky you get them, the lesser the effects of light pollution gradients are, the less atmosphere you're shooting through, and dark sky time is precious, so you want to focus on the objects that you can get when they're best presented for imaging. You also the brighter images, and I really applaud what Stephen was showing with some of the very dim images that he's been able to get of some of the more difficult to observe, visually observe objects. But if you want to be able to show an improvement in your astro images, you're going to have a better luck with brighter images than you will with real dim images. And again, the reason for this is they're less noisy, and the processing, the post processing of the images is all about stretching the contrast and making it brighter. When you do that, both of those, when you make it brighter, when you stretch the contrast, the noise that would normally be hidden in what you get straight out of the smart telescope all of a sudden pops into play. So the better you are at getting a less noisy result, the better your final image will be. That means there's no substitute for dark skies. If just as an aside, I got back from the West Tech Star Party yesterday, and the gentleman I was sharing a room with, I had told him a little bit about what was going on at HAS around Christmas time. He's in my neighborhood here with the Seestar, and he decided to go out and take the plunge. And this guy's a 30-year visual observer, and had never used the Seestar, plunked it on the table out there at the ranch, and did what's good tonight, and he banged out 8 really decent looking images under the dark skies at the Brood Ranch. No light pollution gradients to deal with, and you can also when you are in darker skies, if you can do longer sub exposures, that's the best. So you have to kind of test your system. If you can do 30-second exposures without visible image rotation, that's the best thing, because every sub image that you do adds a certain amount of random shot noise. That's so the more sub images you do, the more random noise you're going to have to deal with. If you can get the same exposure level with 100 30-second images versus 300 10-second images, your signal to noise ratio for the longer image is going to end up better than the shorter images. It's not a linear process. And then if you have the ability and the space on your system, save both the individual FITS files as well as the stack processed images, because believe it or not, if you get the bug to do a little bit more about astrophotography, having those FITS files on your hard disk someplace is going to work out. I've gone back to images that I took in 2006 of M42, and I've reprocessed those raw images 3 different times using better techniques and better processing, and I've improved the images each time. So there's no reason why you can't go back. You get the bug, 5 years from now, you're actually doing astro imaging, and you're comfortable with post processing. You can go back and reprocess a lot of the images that you got with the smart scope previously. Noise. Learn to take dark frames and use astro-image processing like Serial to do the dark subtractions. I'll talk about that one in a little more detail. And I've already talked about taking longer exposures. And then finally, ensure that these smart scopes are, they're small, they don't have a lot of wind area, but if you get too much of a breeze out there and it starts moving around a little, vibrating a little bit, it's going to show up in your sub images, and your final stacked image is not going to be as sharp as it would be if you, had some kind of a windbreak to keep that from happening. And then once you are comfortable with taking the actual data, the best way to improve your imaging is to improve your post-processing skills. Don Taylor, who is a longtime HASer, his way of saying that is, I can teach a monkey how to take the data, okay? But it's the post-processing that takes all of the art. So, okay. At any rate, there's a couple of things that are inherent with a smart telescope. They're all alt-az mounted, whereas an astrophotography rig generally is going to be equatorial mounted. And the reason for that is a thing called field rotation. As the object moves across the sky, your target object actually rotates a little bit. And the software is really good at aligning and combining to kind of adjust for that field rotation. But as you can see in this image that I got from the Seestar Facebook group, you have the field. I'm sorry, hang on, I'm trying to get the laser pointer here. This area here, it's all due to the fact that there was one image that was taken square here. The rest of them rotated as it counterclockwise here. So you have typically these uncooled chips will have a little more noise at the edges than they do in the middle, and so you can see there were more noises there here because there were fewer frames to average with. And then you have kind of a gradient here as it comes up in brightness, background brightness. More and more images got stacked. Well, typically, if you're going to go and post-process this, you're going to crop this out, boom, 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 and you're going to work with the cropped version of the image. So if it's a smaller object, great. If you have a bigger object, you may have to you may have to take multiple images over multiple nights, and I'll go back to the to that Eagle Nebula image that I showed you there, and it's really if you noticed, he said he actually took the frames over 3 separate nights, so he was catching the object in roughly the same orientation on 3 nights when he was able to do it, and that minimized his field rotation that he had to deal with. Okay, improving astro images based on noise. You have to appreciate the fact that there's really 3 places where noise come from. You have sky glow. Even if you're at Bortle 1 site, there's always a little bit of sky glow that comes from as the atmosphere ionizes during the day and then recombines at night. It gives off a really faint glow. But when you're in town with light pollution, that sky noise can be a really dominating factor in terms of the noise from the sky. And it's something that we deal with a lot in processing astro images, is trying to get light pollution gradients where it's not even out of images. Secondly, there's thermal noise, which is also called dark current. Your imaging chip, just because of the way of what it is, it's actually a quantum mechanical device. The heat around it makes electrons randomly pop into pixels, and depending on how warm that chip is, the warmer it is, the more often random electrons pop in to the data. And then finally, there's shot noise. When you take that the voltages that are in each of the pixels on the imaging chip and convert them into digital data, it has to go through some circuitry, and that circuitry always adds a certain amount of random noise. So if you can accumulate, if you can get rid of the thermal noise, that's with shooting dark frames, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. And if you are lucky enough to image from a dark sky area, then the only thing you're left with is shot noise, which is the random noise. That's really hard to pull that out. It averages out a little bit, but it's still, and you never get completely rid of it. So the fewer subframes that you have, the better off you're going to be from a point of view of shot noise. So, okay, what are dark frames? Dark frames, you actually put something over the front of the telescope, and you shoot subframes in the ambient temperature that you're at with your smart telescope. And I used this technique when I was using a modified DSLR, which isn't cooled, and nor are the cameras in these smart telescopes. They're not cooled either. So what you do is you take dark frames at the beginning of an imaging run, and you take dark frames at the end of the imaging run, and it has a tendency of helping you average out the thermal noise that you're collecting. You're actually taking thermal noise images on either end of the data you're taking, and if the temperature changes much over the time you're actually doing the data, taking the data, the difference in the dark frames can help adjust for that. And if you take 15 to 20 frames at the beginning and 15 to 20 frames at the end, you'll end up averaging those all, and with a free program like Serial, which is a free astrophotography, astro-image processing program. It has all of the algorithms. You give it the dark frames, and it'll average them. It'll subtract it from each one of those subframe images that you took, and then once those dark frames are subtracted, then you align and combine the stack of images, and you'll have a much less noisy image, and it'll be easier to it'll look better right from the get-go, and it'll also process a little better as well. So I just wanted to show you a couple of Seestar images that I picked up off the Seestar Facebook page. Obviously, that M16 was one of the first ones. This one was done by a fellow by the name of Chris Hartley. Again, I messaged with him and got his permission to do this. He's also kind of a beginning astrophotographer. He took this image of the Trifid Nebula, which I think, it's noisy compared to what I would have done, but I mean, otherwise it's a really nice image. And he actually posted it and said it didn't look exactly the right color, so I helped him figure out how to do the color calibration on it, and this is the result. But again, he did this one with 752 sub images. And this is a small object, so he was able to crop it and not have to worry about the field rotation. He did this all in one night. And then Stephen sent me raw images, FITS file images of M81 and M82, and I stacked them in serial, and because I'm not really as familiar with serial as I am with like Photoshop or Lightroom. I normally do all my image processing now in PixInsight, but I wanted something that other people might have, and I did the once it was stacked, I went in and did the noise reduction and did the color calibration and so on in Photoshop. And it's not really, it's a pretty decent result. I mean, you can see the H alpha disruption in the center of the cigar galaxy there, and you can really make out the spiral in M82. So, and then Craig showed this image of the Crescent Nebula, and Craig sent it to me as a TIFF file. It was already stacked and everything. So I had a limited ability of, since it was already stacked, I had a limited ability of processing it. So mostly what I did was try and eliminate the light pollution gradient that was in it and even it out as much as I could and bring the actual Crescent Nebula out as well. So it improved a little bit. You know, I think with if I'd had the actual original subframes, I might have been able to do a little better job, but that's okay. But I'm just telling you, I did this in about 5 minutes in Photoshop. It didn't take me a whole lot of time to do that. So, and that's pretty much all I have to show you. Other than I just want to warn you all that as Julian mentioned, you know, there's always an upgrade. So after my friend at the West Tech Star Party, he was really pumped at how well the Seestar did, and I looked at his he has a TeleVue Traveler 101. I said, well, you know, you could you could put a camera on the back of that 101 and you could be doing you know, real astrophotography without too much of a further investment. He's like, ooh, that sounds great. And then I can justify to my wife how I can since I'm using that for astro imaging, I can get the 127 version. So of the refractor. So anyway, I really appreciate that y'all have found what you want to get out of these smart telescopes so far, and that's wonderful. I think that's the benefit of having these smart telescopes. But just be careful if you decide to get into a little more like astrophotography. It's there's always an upgrade. So with that, I guess we can, you want to open it up for questions, Stephen?
Yes, Don, let's, I'm sure, I don't know if we have folks on the call who might be thinking about buying one of these things, but yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions you may have about these things.
Yeah, that's Bill Spazzeri. I got a question. Given the cost of these objects, they're not $10, you know, and they're very so automated. So I'm hearing you guys saying that you start them going and then you go and you eat dinner or you're taking a nap. Have you ever thought about getting like a bicycle chain lock for these things while you're eating your dinner or taking a nap?
Well, I've only used it in my backyard and at the dark side, so I haven't been really concerned about it. I don't know if yeah, I don't think anyone's walking off with my Seestar either of those places, but I don't know. But
I hope you're right. Okay.
I don't know if Craig or Julian have a different answer.
Yeah, I use mine in the backyard, and I'm frequently there because I'm visually observing. And the backyard is fenced, and I could lock the gate, though I didn't.
Okay, good luck to all of you.
I'm going to share my screen for one moment again, because when I saw the picture of the Eagle Nebula that Don was showing, I have 31 minutes of that from the dark site. Let's see. Yeah, this one will do. So is that coming through?
Yep.
And I didn't look at this until just now. I said, didn't I use the Seestar in that last night? And it compares pretty well with the one with much more effort from a light polluted area. So this does emphasize what Don was saying, that darkness helps a lot. And 31 minutes is all this took. And again, I was doing something else. I didn't even come back to this. I think it might be the last one I took, somewhere around 4 o'clock in the morning. And just looking at it now, you're actually seeing the pillars of creation in that. And I've seen photos from our club that show those. And I said, wow, just like the Hubble, they must have a giant telescope and lots of processing and stuff. Nope, this is certainly not that. So I was pretty impressed.
Is this officially considered artificial intelligence?
I don't know if it's started. I don't know if it's artificial intelligence, Bill. I mean, it's algorithmically programmed. I'll give you that. And the processing on the back end of it may have some AI in it. The AI types of tools are just in the last couple of years getting into the higher end astro-imaging arena. So it wouldn't surprise me that ZWO has a little bit of AI in there.
So Lastron has been advertising AI for the post-processing for their new scope, the Origin, which didn't come out yet, but it's about to come out.
Yeah. So for example, the AI tools I use, I actually have one that sharpens the image really well. Deconvolution actually came from the professional astronomy world, and it's real finicky if you don't and you got to when in its raw state you have to play with it like crazy. With AI, it just goes okay. The other thing that we've been doing a lot of is removing stars from an image and processing the stars and the target in the image differently. Because there's such a big brightness difference normally between what your target is and the stars that around it are almost always brighter. And if you stretch everything globally, it messes the stars up. So the old time way was to build a mask that kept the stars from getting stretched, but that had a lot of drawbacks as well. Now you just AI subtract them out of the image, and you process them both separately, and it makes it a lot easier. And then noise reduction. There've been a couple of people that have trained AI on noisy amateur astrophotos, and then they use the same field of view of Hubble images, so that it knows what a good image is and it knows what a bad image is, and what the noise looks like, and some of that's really good too. So the AI is creeping into it, Bill. I don't know for sure if the Seestar is using it or not, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And we might be witnessing a major change in the hobby. We'll have to see how it goes, I guess. Very interesting what you guys all had to say about it.
Well, I do agree with you that may be happening, but I kind of liken it to GoTo. You know, it's like GoTo came and it was a nice tool, and everybody uses it now. But it's it didn't change the hobby from the point of view that people are still wanting to do their observations out under the stars. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, not most of us amateurs anyway.
Yeah, understood.
But yeah, you know, from my perspective, I think I think the smart telescope definitely is interesting to me. For me, at least from my own experience, the Seestar has proven to be kind of the Dobsonian of astrophotography. I mean, it really is. It's astrophotography has always been such a complicated thing. You know, someone brand new who's never done any of this before used to show up to the club meeting for the first time and be like, "Hey, I want to do astrophotography," and whatever veteran they're talking to at the time, try not to roll their eyes, take a deep breath, and be like, "Okay, here's what you got to do." And,
Yeah, but even that's changing though, Stephen.
so it's not it. You know, this is. You know, that I think those days are coming to an end. You know,
Yeah. Even that's changing.
You want to get really good images, but if you just want to get images, it's never easy.
Any rate, any other questions out there? I mean, comments, whatever. Okay, I guess we're good then.
Don't have any more.
Very interesting. Thank you.
So I will go ahead and.
Well, thank you all for coming and for sticking with us here.
You're very interesting, guys. You're on the leading edge. Thank you.
Well, hopefully in a couple of years we can come back and reprise this and really knock your socks off with how things have changed.
Okay. So long. Good night.
Good night.